We are starting our first session of the day. I would like to invite Ms. Phoebe Kunduri. She is the professor of Athens University of Economics and Business and Technical University of Denmark. Phoebe, to moderate this session.
Very happy to be here back in the Innovation Hub. This is a session on the Sustainable Development Solutions Network Global Climate Hub. This is a hub that tries to detail transition pathways at national level for climate neutrality and climate resilience. And today we are presenting results on decarbonization pathways for the whole of Europe, EU 27, the UK, the Balkan countries, and Southeast Asia. I will talk about the structure of the hub and what's its mission. But first, I would like to ask our first speaker. It's a big honor to have her with us, Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garces, former Minister of Foreign Affairs and of Defense of Ecuador. Importantly, former President of the UN General Assembly and Executive Director in GWI, Voices for Change and Inclusion. Maria, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Phoebe, and you caught me off guard because I thought Jeff was going to speak first and I was going to say, yes, I agree, or something like that. But I would love to see. Please, Jeff. No, he said no. Okay. So, well, first of all, I think that all the people present here should deserve a applause or something, because it's hard to get to places, especially, this is the second day, but it's my first day. So, but thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, as always, to UNSDSN for the excellent work you do. I was just talking to Jeff as I entered the room to say, I am told that there are 70,000 people registered to come to COP, and this is bad news and good news. Bad news because it's becoming, COPs are becoming unmanageable in a way, and good news because it shows that the world is scared and worried and interested, and I think this is good news. And I'm happy that we are looking at the national level and how countries are deploying their efforts in achieving net zero by 2030. And I basically would like to share three ideas. Number one, that climate change is it's not the problem. I see it as a symptom of a dysfunctional relationship between our economies, politics, and society. Climate is not alone. We have already trespassed 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries worldwide. Every study, assessment, the SDG report 2023, everywhere we look, it tells you a truth that we all know, that we are off track, that we're not doing well. The recent emissions gap report from UNEP says the same. Emissions have increased only in 1 year 1.2%. This means that we are heading towards a 3 degrees increase in temperature, and that would be devastating at the national level, because people that suffer, they don't suffer globally or in an abstract way. They do suffer locally. They do see their infrastructure, their jobs, their livelihoods be wiped out because of extreme weather events. And I was saying climate is not alone. It's part of what I called, they say, a triple planetary crisis, but I would add a 4th crisis. The number 1 crisis is the climate, the biodiversity loss, and the pollution crisis. This is what we call the triple planetary crisis. But for me, the fourth pillar is the inequalities crisis that is fueled by the three that I mentioned before. It's both cause and an effect. And it's really creating a situation for the developing world that is extremely difficult. When things that are going to be negotiated in this COP, basically the hurdles and the dissent come regarding the means of implementation and the ability of the countries to meet their commitments. And when we say means of implementation, it's about the money, it's about the technology, the low carbon technology transfer and access mechanisms. And number three is the capacity in these countries. I know, Phoebe, that you're looking at the Balkans and other countries in Europe, and the situation is not better. I say the costs and the impacts are uneven. They're hurting more the countries of the so-called global south. They're hurting more the vulnerable countries. And the V20 countries that were 20 at the beginning, but now we see 68 countries subscribing to the high vulnerability front, and this is not low. And coming back to what is expected in this COP, I would say basically three main outcomes. We had good news about the loss and damage fund yesterday. Making the fund operational was agreed yesterday. So the fund does exist. This has been a struggle for more 20 plus years. There is an initial pledges to the fund of, I think, 450 million. Coming from the UAE, I was expecting the European Union to come strong on that, but it was only Germany that pledged some resources, the United States and others. But these are symbolic initial pledges, we understand that. But this already gives a tone of hope and cautious optimism for this COP. The number two outcome that is expected, and I think it's going to be critical, it's the global stocktake decision at this COP. The global stocktake decision has to be bold and yet, include the CBDR principle, which is key in this convention, the common but differentiated responsibilities, accompanied with the means of implementation, the resources, and the tech transfer mechanisms and the capacity mechanisms. We are expecting the GST negotiations are more difficult, especially because of the package, the finance package. We have seen and looked at the latest assessment of where the money is, how much money we have, and how it's going to be invested, and there is a huge, huge gap. We really need to escalate from billions to trillions. That's what the experts say. Apparently, we're getting close to the 100 billion in the Green Climate Fund, but this is again symbolic. An agreement during the Cancun Conference of the Party, 100 billion. Again, it's a little bit of money to what it's actually needed. Some say that it's $2.5 trillion per year, what developing countries need to meet their goals. And so we hope to see a comprehensive, just and bold GST decision. It's not only about the money, it's about the timing, because the window of opportunity is closing. So the next 7 years are going to be extremely critical on the mitigation front, but also on the adaptation front. And the number 3 decision is the framing for a new goal on adaptation. And I think it's very important that we have a translation of the 1.5 we have for the mitigation and the reduction front in the adaptation narrative, but also commitment. So I understand that negotiations are underway. We hope to see that. This would be the third, and perhaps the fourth expectation would be to have the basis and the grounds for a new climate finance framework overall. So it's not putting, you know, a little bit of money in the Green Climate Fund to say we need to scale up finances and do this, but really look at the international financial architecture as a whole to ensure that the terms of, and conditions of financing, especially for the vulnerable countries, really change. The concept of risk and changes, the concept of concessional funding changes, and overall, the idea of a profound and restructuring of debt for the highly indebted countries, which are 61, by the way, in the verge of default, are taken care of in this new financing framework. So that's what we expect to see. It's encouraging to see that the world, in a way, is represented here by 70,000 people. But I really hope that the ones that really make the difference, the very few leaders that are going to come in the opening today, later this morning, are going to take once and for all this seriously. And to take this seriously is taking decisions such as phase out fossil fuel subsidies, we know, and if there is a strong language of phasing out fossil fuels that has to come, it has to come from countries from the UAE. So we have high expectations. I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and everything that is decided here, then it would reflect on the ability of countries at the national level to deliver and do what they need to do. So thank you again, Phoebe. And
Thank you very much, Maria. A very holistic summary of what is going on. Thank you, very efficient. And the UN SDSN Global Climate Hub is really working on the issues that have been mentioned, integrating mitigation and adaptation pathways and detailing the process of implementing these pathways within countries by taking into account the socio-economic structure that will enable this implementation. Who pays what, how you care for the vulnerable, how you mitigate the regressive effects. So thank you very much, Maria. And the floor, Jeff, is yours. Jeff Sachs needs no introduction. He's the president of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and of course, a professor in economics at Columbia University.
Thank you very much. The emissions increase, and we still struggle to really get the world situation under control. I think it's maybe worth reflecting just for a couple of minutes what is so difficult about this challenge, because we're at the start of what will be a couple of weeks of reflection. And I think that there are three issues that I would just put on the table to reflect upon. The first, of the nature of the challenge itself of transforming deeply the energy and infrastructure systems worldwide at a rapid rate within a 30-year period. This is a challenge of a kind that has never before been undertaken, a globally coordinated change of fundamental economic structures and physical infrastructure. So one can expect that this would not be a straightforward. I think that there is something deeper than this, which is that we're trying to do this using the formal structures of a market economy, that this transformation is supposed to take place largely through private business decision-making. And I think what we're seeing in practice every day is that the scale of the changes and the nature of the infrastructure, which is largely public rather than private, is not conducive to market-based approaches. Of course, the world economy, to a large capital, we live in a capitalist global society, but the nature of this transformation is not especially a capitalist transformation. It's not private businesses that are really at the core of the decision-making. And the result is that we try to do things through markets that markets cannot solve. And everything comes late, and everything is inadequate. We do not have the planning that is needed for the nature of this transformation. The second challenge is a political economy challenge, which is that the incentives to face this problem correctly are political, and they are misaligned, of course. The interests of really getting this crisis under control are weak compared to the interests of defending status quo relations, capitalist institutions. So we still, after more than 30 years since the climate convention was signed, still have political battles within our countries that are absolutely basic. Will fossil fuel industries continue to predominate? What is their role? They're all quite powerful. They lobby. They have a lot of cash. They corrupt our politics. And so we don't have serious decision-making in most governments. The United States, which is a key government in this process, is a highly corrupt political system, depending on large-scale campaign contributions as the main medium of politics, and that means that the US political system is still, 30 years later, not deeply engaged in this issue. The president may say something, John Kerry may say something, but to get a vote through the US Congress is nearly impossible. And so the only thing Congress will vote on is tax cuts or tax credits, not any kind of plan, not any kind of public investment in the right areas. And the United States is hardly alone in this. The 10 or 15 countries that predominate in fossil fuel production and use do not have any major commitment to this challenge still. And the third problem is international coordination, because almost everything about this crisis is global, being decided by national governments. Of course, that's why we're here at COP28, because this is a global problem. Why are our national governments the ones that are determining the outcomes of a global problem? Look at how weak the international institutions are. But that's because they depend on national governments. Our international institutions are not an international government. They are a meeting point of national governments, each of which has the weaknesses that I just described. So our governments don't really coordinate. They don't really cooperate. The United States government doesn't really negotiate with anybody else, and that is taken as given. John Kerry will come, he'll make some speeches, he'll go home, he'll do something. It's meaningless. There's no serious professional work taking place among the major governments to make major plans, aside from very specific areas. Maybe in Europe, because of the much tighter connections within the European Union, there is more systematic work. But basically, our national governments are largely operating on their own, and they both lack the know-how, the tools, the political incentives to operate within the countries, and they do not have the structures to cooperate in a meaningful way internationally. Notice that the negotiations are about words, wordsmithing, statements of process. They are not about actual plans. They are not about actual investments. All of that remains at the national level. So why? Because people know that this is a global emergency that is unparalleled, so people come from all over the world to participate. That's a measure, a true measure of how important this crisis is. But 70,000 people here are not solving almost any problem, because we have a few governments that determine the outcomes, and they are so far not consequent in their actions.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is political will that can accelerate the process of implementing the transformation that is needed in order to mitigate and adjust to climate change. And although this is something scientists can push for, but they cannot really make it happen, scientists can at least give very firm directions on how each and every country can follow a transformation that can actually achieve climate neutrality and climate resilience. And then it's up to the people to choose those politicians that will actually accelerate implementation, knowing that science has the solutions and knowing that the money for implementing the solutions and the transformation needed is available. It's just about streamlining the money, the capital, towards the right investments, towards implementing the optimal mixture of technologies, policies, and instruments, financial, fiscal instruments that can enable implementation. And that is why we've created this Global Climate Hub. The idea is to, can I have the presentation back, please? The idea here is to detail for each and every country the transformation pathways for climate neutrality and climate resilience. And why did we think with Jeff that this is useful? Well, we thought that this is useful because every government we've talked with said that we have a very firm understanding that we need to protect our citizens from the effects of climate change, and we need to mobilize effort in order to mitigate further aggravation of this crisis. However, our plans, our climate and energy plans are very upscale. What we need is detail. What we need is the how. How do we actually mitigate and adapt? How do we get on a transformation pathway that is really gonna get us to climate neutrality and climate resilience? So we've put together this climate hub. It's about co-designing with national governments and national stakeholders for each and every country at national and subnational level, the transition pathways in a detailed form that is readily implementable. So we believe we are responding to a very clear need of countries. And the idea is to identify the dynamic optimal mixture of technologies, policies, financial and fiscal instruments, and socioeconomic narratives that can enable and accelerate the transition. The hub has 9 different units, and these are the units that we believe need to work together in order to really implement holistic, integrated, human-centric, and socially supporting mitigation and adaptation pathways. The first unit is about data, collecting, aggregating, visualizing, integrated socioeconomic and geospatial data that will allow the running of the scientific models in order to identify the pathways. The second unit is about the atmospheric physics, and it works together with IPCC. The third unit is climate and energy and transport modeling. The fourth is land use and forest and marine use modeling. So we put together the energy system, the transport system, the land use system with agriculture and forestry, and the marine use system, and integrate those systems into transformation pathways of both adaptation and mitigation. And this is the most holistic and most innovative current work that provides implementable and integrated pathways for adaptation. And not only that, the next unit brings in health, the effects of climate change on physical and mental health, which is again very important to calculate and monetize and integrate it in the pathways. Then is innovation acceleration. Innovation acceleration is again important because it is the technological advancement that gives us cost-efficient solutions that can be integrated in the pathways and accelerate the process of climate neutrality and climate resilience. And then, of course, we bring the socioeconomic narrative. Who pays for the needed investments? How we protect the vulnerable? How do we mitigate the regressive effects in the society? How do we care both for the developed world but also the global south? How do we restructure the global financial architecture in order to make sure that enough resources are streamlined in the global south in order to really be timely in their efforts to become climate resilient, especially because there is an ethical issue there. They didn't create the problem, they are hot spots of the problem. And the final 2 units, it's about participation. No solution pathway will ever be implemented unless it is owned by those who are supposed to implement it. So we have transformative, participatory approaches, methods that allow all relevant stakeholders at national and subnational level to co-design the pathways based on science, but also bringing in all their experience, local knowledge, and their perceptions, beliefs, their own understanding of how the problem can be solved. It's not just about governance, it's about integrating into science stakeholder information and also making them not just co-designers, but shareholders in the implementation of the pathway. And of course, to do that, you need to have educated stakeholders. This means that these people need to be aware of the problem, aware of its effects, aware of the fact that solutions exist and the money exists, and they just need to work together in order to detail the pathways and implement it. And this is the last unit on education, upskilling, and reskilling. Now, I would like to go first to the energy and, you're here, that's amazing, on time. So the first unit is about climate data platforms and digital applications. Professor Yannis Ioannidis is the president of the Global Association of Computing Professionals. He's a well-known figure in who transformed the open science landscape in Europe and beyond. And he's kind enough to work with us to create the digital infrastructure needed for supporting this hub. Yanni, the floor is yours.
Thank you. There was a problem with my badge. Now I'm a party overflower, not a party pooper, but I'm a party overflow. So, as Phoebe said, this is the first pillar, the first unit of the Global Climate Hub. And the key message, the key motivation for having this pillar is that if we look at the main... What happened? Okay, all right. The main targets that I'm sure Phoebe talked about, I wasn't here, but I'm pretty sure that's the spiel. You cannot do this without having models and data, and not just independently, but bringing them together, integrating them, aggregating them, connecting them in substantial overflows. And I think this is a code, that especially that came in COVID, that we cannot deal with the challenges that of the Sustainable Development Goals, other challenges as well, like COVID, without having a meaningful digital transformation. From the 6 transformations of the UNSDSN, the digital transformation is the only one which affects all 17 ones. Other transformations, the subset, but the digital one is the one that affects all of them. So what the unit is called Climate Digital Applications. Essentially, not only the applications that others may be formulating, but also a platform to host them, to integrate them, to make them interoperable. And the key things that we're dealing with is all data-related aspects, so all the remaining 8 pillars, any data that they produce, any data that they need should be coming through the platform. The digital infrastructure for model and data, it's not just a data infrastructure, although that's the basis, but also the models that have been chosen, or future modules that will be chosen afterwards, so that we can have what-if scenarios, visualize the data, the results of the models, and so on and so forth. So, as a computing person, okay, I like architectures. So, so this is what we are mid-flight. We have done a bunch of things, and as you can see, there is data coming in, curated, stored in some way, transformed, put in a place that can be analyzed, and then you have all the models, not just individual models, but also workflows of models, one input of the other, and so on and so forth, plus additional ones that are coming in, also hosted here. With the results, first of all, to be visualizing it or experiencing it in different ways, including virtual reality, augmented reality, extended reality, and so on, towards a digital twin of whatever is your focus with respect to the climate impact. And as I said, from there, having what-if scenarios and recommendations that are based, coming up with pathways that are based on science. I mean, this top element is the science part, and for this, you know, to address the overall Global Climate Hub vision. What I'm shadowing here is things that we don't do. The other pillars, the other units of the Global Climate Hub are creating or choosing from the existing ones, and any new ones that may be chosen down the road will be the result of scientists or specialized computational scientists for climate, socioeconomic modeling, whatever it is you're modeling, this is done by others. What we build is in how you ingest the appropriate data, put it in an infrastructure so that it's all interoperable and so on, and do that. So this is the platform. And currently we're building piece by piece, by a project that we bring into the Global Climate Hub. We're building pieces of it. I'll just give you 3 examples of the projects, and I'll show you one slide for one more. This effort is about, with respect to the platform, I mean, the whole project is much broader, but with respect to the platform is how you can have augmented reality or virtual reality experiences so that you can have citizens experiencing, seeing their preferences, and based on that, seeing what different interventions will do to affect their experience, their climate, and so on and so forth. Intelcom is another project, is dealing with really huge computational power on high performance or high throughput computing, and AI tools on them to analyze the data with complex models so that then you can inform policy, technology policy, scientific policy, and so on. And the third one is Carmine, that is trying to come up with digital twins. And of course, the twin part is someone else's, the digital part is ours, to come up with climate and societal challenges in Europe. On Arsinoe, the VR, AR experience that I mentioned, the key thing is to have evaluation of choices, choice experiments, questionnaires that people get into the VR experience, fill out the questionnaire, and from based on that, they experience the consequences on their health, their environment, and so on. So I say, I prefer this, I prefer that, I prefer the other. Well, you prefer this, but look what will happen to this. And this will be an experience in VR, really emotionally engaging. And Intelcom, as I said, is for science, technology, and innovation space, having all the data that bringing with many technologies, especially natural language processing, deep learning, and so on, to see what transformations will be made that will affect the Sustainable Development Goals and various visualizations. That's it for the first unit on the digital part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yanni. Thank you. The second unit is about the climatology or the underground climatology that one needs in order to create these transition pathways and identify human influence on a wide range of climate variables. We work with atmospheric physicists on this who work with the IPCC report. So this is another layer. This is the first modeling layer of the hub. Then the third unit is about climate and energy, identifying the decarbonization pathways for the energy system and the transport system. And for that, we've worked at DTU and also at the Asian Climate Hub of SDSN. And we have developed decarbonization pathways for EU27, the Balkans region, the UK, and Southeast Asia. And this is what we will quickly showcase here. These are detailed enough to guide the national climate and energy plans, and they are the optimal implementable pathways given current technologies and socioeconomic characteristics in the country, together with the relevant policies, EU policies, national policies, and global commitments. Dogan Gelles is a colleague at the Technical University of Denmark, and together with Ioannis Koundouris, who is a PhD student there, will present in decarbonization pathways for the UK, EU 27, and the Balkans. Dogan?
Good morning. Can you hear us?
Thank you very much, Dogan. I will need the slides back. It's nice that we can see Professor Dogan Gelles and Yannis Koundouris, but it's better to showcase the slides. So, can you see the slides, Dogan?
I have it in front of mine, no worries.
We cannot hear you. Can you arrange so that we can hear Dogan?
We can hear you, and our microphone is on. I think we can hear you. Can you
He's
hear
on,
us?
but we cannot hear it.
It's so on our side it's on. I don't know if the others in the room can hear us. The others in the Teams room. Good morning. Can you check the chat? Yeah, yeah, they can hear you. They can hear us, Phoebe.
Dogan, just give me 1 minute. Can you increase the volume, please, a bit? So the aim of this study, until we find our technical, until we get the technical issues running, the aim of this study is to investigate how we can most effectively reach...
Good morning, hello. Can you hear us now?
Yes, now we can hear. And I was saying that the aim of this study is to identify how we can reach more effectively the European decarbonization targets in line with Fit for 55. The 13 legislative proposals, most of them now voted in 2030, that basically restructure the energy system, the land use system, the transport system in the whole of Europe. Dogan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning from the today's snowy Denmark. It's good that we get still some cold days here in Denmark, and let's hope we can keep that for many, many years more. So yeah, we did a recent study, very brand new study on decarbonization, optimal decarbonization pathways. But the main goal here was to analyze, is it enough to set only a EU system-wide target, you know, a European target by the EU institutions, the European Commission, or do we need also national targets, you know, to be more effective on reaching the goals and reaching the goals of the Fit for 55 strategy of the EU? And for this, if we can go to the next slide, Phoebe.
Yes.
We used the energy system model Balmoral. Due to time reason, I will not go to the details of that, but it's covering the whole European energy system, including the Balkan countries, Turkey, and all European countries so far. And if we go to the next slide, in that study, we have implemented the Fit for 55 targets for 2030, and we wanted to see what is the effect if we install only at a system level a target, a EU level, and what would be the effect when we do it also on the national level, you know, break down this target and to have a member state level and targets for the Balkan countries, how the things would change. And so applying this carbon budget scenario, we could gain very interesting results, which are on the next slide. Phoebe, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, this slide. No, can you see both graphs, or there's only one graph? Can you see both graphs on that slide?
No,
because we can't see.
We can only see one graph.
Oh, there's something broken in this graph, but maybe I can talk based on the left graph you see. There's in this graph, you see the renewable energy share, but the other graph would be my main results, which somehow got lost on this graph due to probably different PowerPoint versions. The main message we found out, maybe I can talk about that, is that applying an emission target at EU level, but not at the country level, would lead that some members would overshoot the targets. You know, they would overshoot with emissions, and they would probably not reach the same level of renewable energies if we don't break down the EU target to member state and to country level. And if we don't set the country level targets for the Balkan countries, non-EU Balkan countries, then some might be overshooting. And especially the coal-rich countries in Eastern and Southeast Europe, like Poland, Serbia, Czechia, and also Macedonia, and some of the Balkan countries would overshoot with emissions in 2030 if we keep only a system-level target and the EU doesn't collaborate with all the countries, member states also, to break down the limits. If we go to the next slide, I hope you will get the results. Again, click again, Phoebe. Oh, I think the animations don't work on your slide. So some graphs are lost, Phoebe. That's why I cannot.
You can give the overall conclusion of the study, and we will share the slides from the Innovation Hub. Okay. So with regards to the national profiles of Poland, Serbia, and Albania.
Yeah, usually here should be 3 slides, but here I can tell you that mainly we find out that there needs also be a better collaboration between the Balkan countries. For example, Serbia has a lot of coal resources, and it's quite difficult for them to decarbonize only on a country level. But if they collaborate with the hydro-rich neighboring countries, you know, with the other Balkan countries, Albania has a lot of good hydro resources. Then with this international collaboration between the different Balkan countries, we would reach a very cost-efficient decarbonization pathways. For example, Albania's good renewable resources would be available for Serbia as well. So what I'm with this slide pledging for is, from an energetic and economic perspective, it's very win-win situation if all the countries collaborate and make trading based on renewable energies cross-border easier. That is the message should have been the message of that slide. And and the system cost, there is a graph which shows, you will get that later, that having this national targets implemented on top to the EU-wide target helps to get decarbonization for all countries, and it doesn't come with a huge higher cost. So the costs are almost the same between the national limit scenario and the EU-wide scenario. So more or less what I'm saying is implementing the country-level target with the renewable sources, and if we allow this cross-border trading, will even not come with higher cost for consumers. So at the end, we can get decarbonization more effectively in all countries.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dogan. So this basically says that EU 27 can meet the targets, and it's quite advanced in doing so. The rest of the European countries that are not in EU27 have options, have potential, but they are lagging behind with regards to their decarbonization efforts. But we can guide them to get on pace so that they can become a very instrumental partner in the decarbonization strategy and implementation of that strategy of Europe.
Yanis will showcase very briefly, maybe in 2 minutes, Phoebe, how the hydrogen future could look like if we collaborate across Europe. So I will give the word for 2 minutes to Yanis, if you don't mind.
We need to finish. It's Alina. Okay, so she's on, Alina? So Europe has set the foundations. Okay, so Europe has, the European growth strategy says explicitly that Europe has to set the foundations for a hydrogen economy by 2030. And this, the continuation of this study, which Dogan and Yanis will present in a couple of slides, shows the hydrogen potential across Europe. And it is a very, very interesting picture. But first, I will let Dogan and Yanis present the slides.
Yeah, Yanis, just please go on.
Yes. Hello. So this study focuses a lot on hydrogen in Europe, and we try to dive into hydrogen as a vector, how we can connect also countries not only through electricity, but also through hydrogen and hydrogen trading. And as you can see in the slide, the European Commission set ambitious goals. So we have like 40 gigawatts of electrolysis capacities to be installed by 2030. And this was proposed by Fit for 55 package. However, later on, last year, this number was revised by the REPowerEU, where 10 million tons of hydrogen should be imported from other nations, and 10 million tons of hydrogen should be produced domestically, which corresponds to a large number of electrolysis, such as 100 gigawatts of domestic electrolysis capacity. In the slide, however, on the right-hand side, you can see that every country sets national strategies and national targets on how to meet those goals. However, until now, we don't have a unified strategy on how we can actually take advantage of all the geospatial renewable potential all over the nations, EU nations, to have like a system cost that has a minimum cost solution. So this is what we try to investigate in this study. Next slide, please. Yeah, Phoebe, sorry, you passed one slide.
Maybe one more slide.
Yes, exactly. So in order to solve this puzzle, we use the previous model, so-called Balmorel. And here you can see the optimal result of the model for 2050. So in the left-hand side of the slides, you see the hydrogen network that the model builds all over European nations. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the electricity network. What we allow the model is that we have an internal competition. We allow the model to produce hydrogen from electrolysis, steam methane reforming, or with CCS, so-called blue hydrogen or gray hydrogen from steam methane reforming without capturing the CO2. What we see towards 2050 is that the model builds an extended network all over European nations, and we can identify 4 main corridors of trading. One from Spain and Spain to France and to the Central Europe, from Italy, from the Balkan countries, and one from the Ireland and UK. So what we see in the model, actually, if we look at the electricity map, is that all the solar and wind-rich areas of Europe, they try to produce as much hydrogen as possible in order to satisfy the Central European hydrogen demands located in Germany, Netherlands, and Belgium. And if we go to the next slide, please, Phoebe. Here we illustrate the trading between different nations. So we can see actually with the blue color, you see where we could store hydrogen potentially in the future in geographical formulations called salt caverns. So what happens actually is that the network is not only influenced by the demand and supply, but also influenced on where we can actually store hydrogen in the future, because salt caverns is a geographical formulation where it's spatially located in specific countries. So for example, you can see that in Spain, France, and UK, we have like a good potential to store hydrogen. Also, for example, in Greece and Romania. So all of these characteristics, technical characteristics, they affect the future puzzle of hydrogen in Europe, and we should take advantage of a unified strategy and a unified network where we can push large volumes from the south parts of Europe, Eastern, and from the UK into the mainland, and create this kind of trading and hydrogen market in the future. And that's in a nutshell our study, more or less.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we give already the main messages. We can pass the slide.
Okay, thank you, Dogan. So it is obvious that Southern Europe has huge potential for hydrogen. And questions like, does it make sense to have all industrial or most industrial activity in Central Europe, or would you want to relocate that? Very interesting questions, both technically but also politically. Okay, next we go to the next unit of the Global Climate Hub. Is Alina on? Is she on? Is Alina connected?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
then
yes.
she can share her slides and she can quickly go through the FABO consortium. So it's not only about energy decarbonization, it's also about land use decarbonization and also recarbonization of ecosystems. You cannot achieve climate neutrality just by decarbonizing the energy system. You need much more than this. Alina, are you on? Okay, until Alina gets ready, we want to also showcase the work of Southeast Asia decarbonization pathways. So I'm very happy to introduce Professor Wayne Yong Leon, who is leading the Asian Green Future Project of the SDSN Sustainability Studies. The floor is yours. And please, let's go as fast as possible. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Phoebe. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. ASEAN Green Future is a multi-year research project that started in 2021. It involves Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Climate Work Center, and 9 country teams from universities and think tanks across Southeast Asia. So these researchers, they do climate policy analysis and develop net zero pathways to inform policy recommendations and support the strategic foresight of policymakers in Southeast Asia. Okay. All right. Southeast Asia is the 4th largest energy consumer in the world. And 83% of the energy used comes from fossil fuels. In a high renewable energy scenario, the key technology will be solar PV, followed by wind, hydro, and biomass. And the region has a target to reach 35% of renewable energy installed capacity in the mix. And this region also counts on natural gas as a transition fuel to keep the stability of the grid, as well as support a high penetration of variable renewables. Now, natural gas, although it is a lower emission fossil fuel, it still emits 490 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilowatt hour. So we asked the question, is there a better alternative to replace the coal-powered plants that generate the base load power and support a higher penetration of renewable energy? And here in this chart, you see that biomass actually has half of the emission intensity of compared to natural gas. Now, biomass has been constrained in its use. Biomass power generation has been constrained in Southeast Asia because of instability of feedstock supply, of the prices, and also of collection challenges from rural area. It is also bulky, difficult to compact, and because it is wet, it has a lower efficiency in power conversion. So, biomass power generation has not taken center stage as an investment opportunity compared to solar and wind in Southeast Asia.
Please try to be as fast as possible.
Okay.
Because we have to.
Okay. Despite it being recognized as having an increasing role in the bioenergy space. So, for biomass power generation to actually to scale up, it actually needs a stable fuel. For example, wood pellets. Because wood pellets, it can be easily traded and transported, and it can be stockpiled in advance of needs. Now, we are aware of the controversies associated with wood pellets. And Viva is at the brink of collapse. It is the world's largest biomass energy company. And Drax is a UK-based biomass power plant and also runs an international biomass supply chain. It has questionable wood sourcing practices. The acacia plantations in central Vietnam that has been linked to landslides. And the scientific case that has been built against burning forest biomass as energy. Now, we think that many of these shortcomings could be overcome through better corporate governance, internal controls, policies and procedures that make sure that there is coherent disclosures on climate-related matters, and engagement with external auditors. In Southeast Asia, between 2001 to 2019, Southeast Asia lost 61 million hectares of forest to mining, to deforestation, and to agriculture. And this is an area that is larger than Thailand. Now, national governments usually mandate the replanting of these degraded areas. However, the replanting results have often not been successful. And we have identified these reasons. And these reasons, they can all be attributed to the lack of human intent for replanting to be successful. And this is because the economic motivation is not clear. And also because of these as a consumable good. So there is a big difference from seeing something as a consumable good and a capital asset. With consumable good, it's for immediate value consumption. Whereas if you see something as a capital asset, you will spend effort nurturing it so that it can produce consumable value for a long time to come. Now, in ASEAN Green Future, we are currently in the phase of optimizing the amount of renewable energy that is available in each country. A scenario that involves developing tree plantations on deforested and degraded areas will lead to a different biomass energy potential estimation from what governments are currently estimating from agriculture and forestry residues. And so the idea here is to link the quest for biomass power to ecosystems healing. And if this dream can come true, the renewable energy mix for Southeast Asia could look like this. Baseload power could come from hydro and biomass. Mid-marriage power could come from solar, wind, and storage. And peak power could come from pumped hydro storage and green hydrogen. And on this note,
thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are running completely out of time. So I would like to ask Alina now to give us a very brief introduction to the work that the FABLE team is doing. Alina, are you on? No, she's not. Okay, so there is another team that is working on land use pathways. And finally, I will ask the representative for the European Commission, is he on, Philippe? To close the session. So I'm really very happy that Philippe Tulkens, head of Unit Climate and Planetary Boundaries, DG Research and Innovation, the Commission is with us. This Global Climate Hub is not just bringing in the technical decarbonization of the energy system, the transport system, the land use system together. It's also working on the socioeconomic narrative, which is something that the IPCC is not doing and something that is needed. And we hope that the Commission will also be interested in the work of the hub. Philippe, the floor is yours. Please close the session. We need to increase volume. You need to unmute.
I see you are in a hurry. Do you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I will try to help you. And I see that you're in a rush. Thank you first for the invitation and the nice words that even Jeffrey Sachs had about the European Union and the way we try to work on these issues. Indeed, we are quite proud in the EU of our contributions to the scenarios and the work on integrated assessment modeling, notably for the IPCC. I don't know if you're aware of this, but EU research in this field matters, and it seems to set the standard. In the IPCC Working Group 3, 5 European models provided over 75% of the scenarios in the IPCC assessment. This is good, but maybe it lacks diversity, as on such issues we need more engagement and results from other parts of the world. This is probably my main message for this intervention. We need to bring more teams into the game. Integrated assessment models have helped in bridging the work of Working Group 1 and Working Group 3 of the IPCC. We all know that integrated assessment models results were key for the 1.5 degrees Celsius report, and it constitutes important contribution to the global stocktake 2023. But the IAM community is also in the spotlight. Results from IAMs is one of the trickiest part of the summary for policymakers approval sessions, and some governments wish to place caveats on the nature of IPCC outputs, with the IAM's outputs in the focus. As a response, the community, the scientific community, needs to be broadened and become more flexible to address these criticisms. So what could it do? I'll take a few observations taken from an IPCC workshop held in April 2023. So we need more diversity in the community. This I said, but I wish to repeat. Which means in practice more investments in this area from other world partners than the EU, because we fund most of the activities in the area. The EU calls for proposals are open to all, whether Europeans or non-European teams, so please apply to the calls. But I hope that other partners in the world will also release calls in this area. We need also to better identify where research stops and where the assessments starts. The pool of researchers in this area is relatively limited, and therefore the boundaries between the contributors and the assessors are not always very clear. In view of the upcoming cities report for the IPCC, some developments could occur. We need more focus on regions, sub-regionals, and city scales. We need to expand the scope of these models to cover impacts and biodiversity and non-climate related, non-climate outcomes, such as also overshoot scenarios. We need open access scenarios and open access to modeling tools. This is critical for the transparency of the process, and we cannot do good science if we don't have transparent science and access to the
Philippe,
tools.
can you close in
Yes.
half a minute, please?
Okay, I
Thank
will
you.
then go to the last conclusion. Is just to remind that in the European Union, the Green Deal is really bringing the ecological transition at the heart of the EU policy agenda. You said it in your introduction. Thank you for this. And what we are trying really to do is to improve the tools constantly with the scientific community to make sure that we remain relevant and we understand that we are going beyond just classical economic growth, and we are fully integrating the environmental component and our objectives into our economic policies. But for this, we need to improve the tools, and we need to work with the research communities, in particular environmental economists, to address this challenge together with us. I hope this is helping you in keeping your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Philippe. Thank you. And in closing, I just want to say that EPUN is working on the participatory approaches of the hub, which is something that the UN Global Innovation Hub is promoting. And
thank you very much. So I'll top Philippe and just round up by saying, essentially, what we try and focus on is bridging this gap between the science and the policy and the society. So all these models and the outputs are very useful, but at the end of the day, it comes down to somebody, a decision maker, to take those decisions. And what we do is that we use innovative and cutting-edge methodologies, systems innovation, transition management, to support those key decision makers and walk them through using a guided framework where they can actually utilize, in a practical and useful way, the scientific outputs to support practical innovations and key actions, charting a course for a sustainable transition. Thank you.
thank you, EPUN. Dr. EPUN Atkinson, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are done with this session, and we'll move into the next.